start from the beginning. So just a little bit of background. So Deploy Hub was the original contributor of Ortelius to the CD Foundation. So we contributed about 80% of the code base over to the CDF under the Ortelius project, and Ortelius was accepted into the CDF, I believe, back in last October as part of that. So one of the things that we do from the Deploy Hub side is we actually host a version of Ortelius, and we call it Deploy Hub Team. So it's actually Ortelius running in Google Cloud, where we have the SaaS version running so people can sign up and kind of work with it there. So for the sign up process, all you have to go is to the free SaaS. So we'll talk about the Deploy Hub Team, and down at the bottom here is the sign up form. So if you haven't done this, we'll go ahead and put this together. And basically what we're doing is we're going to set up an organization, a company, and a project inside of the Deploy Hub SaaS version. When we do this, it allows us to Deploy Hub and Ortelius are organized around a domain hierarchy. You can think of it as folders. And what will happen is when you go through and complete the sign up process, we'll go ahead and kind of bootstrap a sample project, and that's inside of your organization. So I'm going to go ahead and log into an account that's already been set up.
Actually, I just remembered now. I did sign up.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm actually logged on now to the to my account. So.
Perfect. So in your account, we will see the Hipster store, and I'm just going to change my filter here a little bit so we can see everything. Oh, I'll do it by domain. Let me change the domain, online store company. So the domain is where the folder structure of where we kind of store all the different objects. So in this case, you'll see on your side the Hipster store 4th of July sale, the Labor Day sale, and you may or may not have additional versions that are out there. But basically, this is the demo application that we utilize to kind of get everybody some data to play with. Now, on the top here, you'll see, oops, let me go back. Clicked the wrong place. Up on the top here, you'll see reverse proxies. The reverse proxy is a way for the SaaS version to talk to your network. Right now it says one of two. So inside of your domain hierarchy, we place a reverse proxy engine at the online store company level. And then also there's going to be another one that's going to be underneath your project name.
Okay, to ask you questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have any reverse proxy set up yet. It's just saying question mark reverse proxy running.
Okay, it just says it hasn't refreshed yet, so it'll catch up. It refreshes every couple minutes. That little message up there.
Oh, so I don't need to set one up. It's what you're saying?
No, it well, part of it is like in this case where mine says one of two. I'm actually Deploy Hub is actually running one of the reverse proxies, and that reverse proxy is to handle deploying the Hipster store application to our Google Cloud environment for like demo purposes, and for you to kind of play with on that front. The second one is one that you'll start as part of your setup process. So you don't need it right away, but I'm going to point you to where the documentation is to get started with reverse proxy. So if you just go to docs.ortelius.io, we will have the reverse proxy set up. And this is actually a Docker container that runs inside of your network. So this is going to give the SaaS version the ability to, if you have like a private Docker registry, or if you have a like Jenkins running on your network that you haven't exposed to the public, the reverse proxy allows us to go ahead and work with those connections as part of that process. So what the reverse proxy does, it actually goes out. It's a Docker container, and here's the instructions to go ahead and pull it and get it up and running. Some of the parameters that you'll need to get it running correctly. One of the things in your welcome email was a client ID that was sent to you. That will be where you go ahead and put in the client ID as part of that process. And then once it's up and running, we'll be able to do the communication to that. This isn't something that we need to do right away, but it'll be something that you'll need to do if you want to start deployments inside of your network.
Okay.
So just go to docs.ortelius.io and just navigate to the reverse proxy setup at that level. Just to give you an idea of what the command looks like, let me make this bigger. Yeah, let me do it this way. It'll fall off the screen. So, of course, Zoom's always in the way. So this is like an example of the command where we pass in the client ID as one of the parameters. I just have mine hard-coded instead of as an environment variable because I'll run multiple proxies at the same time when I go through and do testing. So basically, it's just a Docker run, and that will allow us to go ahead and do the communication between that process. So here's kind of like a picture of what's happening. So the deploy up team, Ortelius, has a backend piece over in Google. That's where the Postgres database is for the SaaS version. It's actually running in a Kubernetes cluster, and you come in through the web UI as part of that. And so that's what you logged into just a little while ago.
Right.
Now, inside of your firewall is the one-way reverse proxy. That reverse proxy I think it's like every 20 seconds, goes out and talks to the database and says, do you have anything? Here I am. I'm this client ID. Do you have anything for me, any work for me to do? And what will happen is it'll go out and poll the SaaS side, the Google side, to see if there's any work to do, and such as like a deployment or do some sort of work that needs to be done inside of your network. And once it gets something to do, let's say like a deployment, it'll start communicating, depending on how that deployment's set up, with your CI/CD tools, your different repositories like Artifactory, Nexus, your GitHub repo, other Docker, like your Docker build, for example. If you're doing those locally, you'll talk to your Docker host. And then it'll also communicate with your endpoints. So your endpoints being, if we're going to transfer a file around, we will do that over SSH from the reverse proxy container over to your endpoint. Let's say it's like a VM machine that we're running, or it could be over to a Kubernetes cluster, or to a cloud provider. When we do that communication, this reverse proxy is going to need to have the necessary like SSH keys, user ID, passwords, kubeconfig set up in order for it to go in and like log in into GitHub. It may need a SSH key, and that just happens on the startup as part of a volume mount. So you can see here at the end, I'm actually mounting up my my SSH keys and a couple other volume mounts that I want, as well as my kubeconfig process. Because the container is running inside of your network, none of these keys actually leave your network. They all stay internal.
Okay.
So that's kind of how the process works. And what that'll allow us to do, if we go back over to our setup here, I'm just going to filter on version, do Labor Day hipster store. So you'll have you'll see something like this in your application list. What you can do is you can actually just click on one of them, go to tasks, and it will go ahead and allow you to deploy. I don't have my setup's a little bit different because I've been doing some work for some testing, but your environment will say Kubernetes cluster, for example, as one of or hipster store cluster, and the version that you want to deploy. Now, what will happen is if we look at one of these application versions, we actually have a pre-action that's going to execute. The pre-action, what it does is it actually goes out and that pre-action is installed in the reverse proxy. We pass in parameters to that pre-action, and it says to Google, go ahead and resize the demo cluster that's out there. And we'll go ahead and do a resize of the cluster from 0, I think like 2 or 3 node pools in the cluster. And then once that's been completed, we'll go through and start deploying all the different components that need to go out to that cluster. So that will push out all these different versions of the component over to our demo cluster as part of that process. Now, what will happen is I think every like half hour that that cluster will get resized to 0. So because there's no need to keep it running all the time for the demo purposes. Just something that you can play with at that level. So you'll be able to pick any one of these versions and be able to deploy them as part of that process.
Okay.
And when you look at some of the logs, let's go into one of these. Let me scroll down to where the logs are. Oh, we'll pick it up from here. You'll actually see when you deploy one of these into the environment, it should log into G-Cloud. You'll see it configuring up your kubeconfig on the fly, and then this is where we're actually doing the resize of the cluster, spinning it up so it's larger. And then after the resize has been done, that's that pre-action that I just was showing you at the application level. Then it's going to go through and start deploying the individual components. Now, what you'll see is most of these will be already present because we're kind of sharing the same environment, and the deployment engine will figure out if we need to, depending if you're going forward or backwards in the version tree, for the component, whether we need to go ahead and replace it or not. So if you get this back and it says everything's all up to basically all set, it's just because somebody else, because we're doing a shared environment, that's the reason why. If not, we'll go ahead and see if this one has one. You'll see the actual deployment happening in this case. We recognize that we need to put this new component version out there. And we're going to go ahead at the component level. There are also actions that occur at that level.
So when you say you're doing deployment, I presume you're doing the deployment of the pods in Kubernetes. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this demo that we're looking at is a set of different microservices that are written to run in Kubernetes.
Okay, gotcha.
So if we look at one of the components, so here's like the list of the components. Like there's the ad service, the cart service, the checkout, currency. I think there's like 12 or 15 microservices that belong to the application. We can actually see the dependencies from this point of view. So this is what this application is consuming for microservices. So this is all the different services that are being consumed at that level.
Okay.
So if we go to the component and just pick one of them, we'll take cart service. We can see which version the cart service is affecting. So this version 150 is being consumed by two different application versions. So this is the flip that's happening. So when we look at it from the application viewpoint, we're saying, what is this? Which microservices is this application consuming? And from this side is I'm a service who's consuming me. What's my blast radius? So if I break, who am I going to affect?
Okay.
Now here we have that a custom action at this level. So we don't have a pre-action or post-action. We're doing a custom action to do the deployment. So actions are just ways to run like scripts as part of the process. So in this case, we're going to use this custom action that's going to deploy this service through Helm over to a cluster. So if we go back to our application and we go back to, I think we're in 10 before. Look at one of these older deployments. Yeah, there we are. So we did our resize and now we're doing our deployment. The deployment engine figured out, oh, I have to put a new version of the email service out into the cluster, and it's going to execute that custom action, the Helm chart one. One of the things that the Helm chart does, that action is it actually checks out the code from GitHub, and then it will go through and generate basically what we call a Helm overrides file. And we'll place into that Helm overrides file information, key value pairs that we're going to be able to pull from the deploy hub or the Ortelius GUI. And I'll show you where some of these are defined. Some of these you'll recognize, like the Docker SHA. That's coming from the component level. Remember, we had to specify the chart name. That's going to be at the component level. Some of the other things that are being pulled, like I believe like this one, the DDD, to some test data, that's being pulled from the environment level. And same thing like with server host name and name. Those are like coming from the endpoint level as part of that process. So with this data that we're bringing along, we're actually going to go ahead and execute a Helm upgrade. Basically, it's a Helm install. So here is the computed values for the Helm chart. We get some additional things that are coming through the ingress. So this is, think of it as like a Helm template command that's happening with all of our different manifests that we need to apply to the cluster. So there's the template for the service, and then there's the template for the deployment. And we'll see that we're picking up the image name as part of that. Now, the image name is actually one of those variables that we have up here. So we're able to pull together the repo and the tag, if I can find the tag in here. Get repo, there's the tag as part of that, and here's the component tag as part of that process. So that's where we're actually going through in our Helm template, saying this is going to be our new image that we want to deploy. And this is just the typical Helm output from doing a Kubernetes deployment. And we'll see that everything is good. And we record that. And then we go on to the next service that we need to see if we need to update. So the deployment engine will figure out if it's an incremental deployment, whether we need to, if it's already there, we'll skip over it. If it's not there, we'll go ahead and do that individual step.
Are you doing some kind of Ansible there? It looks like
yes, this is, we actually run Ansible to execute the Helm deployment.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
And the reason being is, so let's say we're running, because we're running this inside of the reverse proxy container, we have customers that have like a VM set up that has all the kube config, all the security, all those things are kind of like hard coded on that VM. And we call it like a jump box. So we'll jump from our container over to that VM through Ansible to go ahead and run the Helm commands on that remote machine. So it was a weird scenario that we ran into, and it was easier to utilize Helm to get us over to that remote machine to do the execution.
Okay.
And also, if we have just regular plain file deployments, we'll use Ansible to go ahead and do just like if we have to deploy like a website or a jar file, we'll use Ansible to do that copy of the files over to that machine.
Are you doing this deployment? Sorry, I'm still trying to understand the overall architecture of how Ortelius is set up. So are you this Ansible that is executing? Is it executing over several nodes, or is it just on a local node?
Just on a local node.
Okay.
So the Ortelius reverse proxy has Ansible. That Docker container has Ansible installed in it,
right.
And that's where it's just running as a single host that it may need to connect to. As part of that process. Most of the Kubernetes stuff will just run locally, and we'll just flip Ansible to get to run in like a local mode instead of in a remote mode fashion.
Okay, gotcha.
It's just an easy way to encapsulate the communication and the running of anything we need to run. We basically run through Ansible because that way it shields us from having to deal with whether it's a local machine or a remote machine.
Okay. Okay, but if in case you have a remote machine, what I think probably one of the consideration, how would you handle the SSH key distribution in that scenario? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so it is considered an endpoint, and let's say we have a prod SQL server, and what we'll put in there is basically the host name. I just put in the IP address. We're going to use SSH. If you have a special SSH port number that you need to connect over, and then there's an object called a credential. And credential objects, if we go down to setup, see if I have a couple.
Credential.
Here's one for Jenkins. Let's see if this one is. Don't think I have access to that one. So let's go back to credentials, add one. So we'll add a private key.
Oh, okay.
So the private key is going to be what we're going to use to connect to the SSH.
All right.
Now the thing with the private keys is it'll be like root .ssh. I could do like IDRSA.
Right.
And that would be the private key that I'm going to RSA. That looks good there. And at execution time, we'll go and basically on the Ansible command, you pass in the location of the private key to that.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that you'll need to do is at the reverse proxy level, we'll need to expose the private key over. So let me get over that. So that's where, like right here, I'm doing a volume mount of my Steve SSH keys, and we put them into a special directory of special volume mount called /keys. And what ends up happening is on the reverse proxy startup, any files that are in the /keys directory get copied over to the right user ID inside of the container, and all the permissions get set. There's some weird things that happen with permissions over these volume mounts. So we have to go through this weird extra step to copy the keys over into a directory inside of the container, a directory that's owned by the container, not a volume mount. And then that way we can manipulate the permissions on the keys. And again, these keys are not going anywhere. They're just being referenced locally to your reverse proxy engine.
Okay.
And then if we go back to our endpoints, let's see if we have, pick up our prod server. Yeah, I just don't have. Oh, I didn't give permissions. Credentials we hide them by default.
Okay.
Oh, everybody has it. I'll have to check what's happening there. But the private key the ID RSA would be available for us to go ahead and reference. The other place that credentials are used are also for like repositories. If we need to log into like a HTTP or repository, could be like a Maven repository, where we need to log into a Maven repository or a Jenkins job. There's ways that we can pull artifacts from basically websites as part of that process. So that may need a key as part of that login process. Also, some of the actions will need to utilize a key as well. So like when you want to log into GitHub, we'll create a key and reference that as part of the process.
So you create a key on GitHub, essentially, a key of sort.
Yep. And then you expose that key through the credentials objects, and you kind of hooks all the plumbing together underneath the covers for the process. Now, some of the other keys, you can do an encrypted in a database, and basically that's just like a username, password, and we go through and encrypt it. But that key is actually the user ID and password for that object, that credential object, is going to be encrypted and placed into our SaaS database. So when I tell people when they're using our SaaS version to use private keys as much as possible, because the private key will always stay inside your network and never leave, where something that's encrypted in the database will actually get put into our Postgres database in Google. So just a heads up on that.
Okay. Does it enforce any kind of key rotation or anything like that for security?
No, that would be usually when we are talking to like using a private key to a SSH into a box, whatever the policy that remote machine has is what we have to play by. So we don't force a rotation on our side, but usually it'd be our target that we're going to that's going to force the rotation.
Okay. Okay, I just came by the the new feature on GitHub whereby it ages your key that you set up.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize they added that.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That needs to be done because I have keys that I have the same key for last
Forever, right?
10 years.
Just like everybody else, right?
Yeah, it's the same one I use for everything. It's like, and it makes it easy to log in without getting password prompts.
Right, exactly.
So that will get us going. So that will be just to give you like a quick refresher of kind of where we've been. You'll have the Hipster store as a demo application that you can play with. You'll see the components that are associated with them. You'll be able to do the deployments, and they'll run through the reverse proxy that we're running on our network here. So the one of two is one of ours that we're running. And then if you want to add in your own components and applications, you'll add them into your domain. So what will happen is at the domain level, you will have, so on my level, let me see. So my company is called Santa Fe Software. So we have global, then Santa Fe Software, and then the online store project. And then at that level, like I have another one called HPC. So HPC was when I filled out that sign-in form, I put in Santa Fe Software as my company name, and then my project was HPC. So if you want to go ahead and create components and applications, I would recommend that you put them into that your project versus the online store project.
Okay, so now I think I did create a. You mind if I share my screen with you?
Yeah, let me go ahead and stop and go ahead and share.
Let me show you what I have so far.
Yep.
Screen. I think I've got. We're just going to share a desktop. That might be easier because I'm going back.
That's what I usually do.
Yeah.
You never know what Zoom's going to do.
Exactly. So let me share. Which one? Okay, I'm going to share desktop. Desktop one, share. Okay, here we go.
It's funny we both picked the same background.
Yeah, I have 3 displays here. So this is one of the. This is the one. This is my primary one.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, so I see that you have the online store company, and then what's the? Click on that one there. That ring.
This one here.
Yeah.
So the one I'm clicking on right now is called All Source.
Mm-hmm. So that's your company, and then that one there is probably going to be your project.
this is my project. Okay, I think I remember. I remember doing that when the initial credential was sent to me.
Yep.
So now once I've selected that, I've essentially selected where the
That's going to be just you can just think of it as folders
okay.
of how to organize things. There's a whole process that Ortelius and Deploy Hub support, which is called domain driven design.
Okay.
Which gets into organizing microservices in solution sets. So you put all the security related services in the security domain. You put all your like credit card processing in a credit card domain. So that's where you get to do organize based on folders. Because what ends up happening is the GitHub repos you can't organize them very well. They only have basically organization and repo name. So you run out of ways to keep track of things on the GitHub side. But Deploy Hub and Ortelius span across all that through the domain hierarchy.
Okay.
So go ahead and go over to application, go over to components, let's see. And say add base up there at the top.
Add base.
Yep, and right
all
there.
Right.
And we'll just do a container for now.
Container.
And you'll see the drop down there for full domain. That is going to be where you want to put them. So you're going to want to put them in test drive.
Oh, okay.
So those are all the like different folder locations that you can store your components. And the same thing will happen with the application that you create.
Okay. So which ones of these have to be selected at this point?
Just select the bottom one, for example, the test drive. Yeah. And then you just put in a name in whatever you can say test component. And just hit save. We can worry about the other stuff later. So go back up, you'll see a save in that little box. Yeah, right up there. Now, if we go back to components and click on the little filter icon there. Yep, click right to the right of it and select domain. And you'll see at the bottom will be your test drive. So we're just going to filter and just click anywhere. And I'll get rid of the next
one I just created.
Exactly.
All right.
So that is your first component. It doesn't do anything. There's no repository or anything along those lines associated with it. But that's going to give you your first component. And then on the application side, it works the same way. We're actually going to say add base and select the same domain, the test drive. And you could do put in a name like my application or my app. Perfect. And save that one. Oh, I'll have to double check that.
Oh, is that a hiccup of sort?
It could be. I'll have to look at your license count because you should have like 1,000 applications to be licensed. What was your company name again? All source.
Okay. Yes.
All right. I'll have to take a look.
No problem.
At that level, just hit OK, and we'll skip that for now.
Okay.
And basically, what will happen is you'll be able to then add if you click on applications again. Say no to that. Just click like on 4th of July sale. Anyone, you can click on anyone. Just double click. and go to package components. And this is where it's just because your screen resolution. If you stretch it out a little bit to the right. Yeah. So see, you have test drive there now on the right on the component selector. Yep. Go ahead and expand that node out and expand out general. And then there's your test component.
Oh.
So what this is doing is associating, you just basically drag and drop. You should be able to. So grab test component over on the right and just drag it out. Yep, you can drop it right there. So you've just added test component to this version, the Hipster Store 4th of July sale. So now that the next time you go and deploy the Hipster Store 4th of July sale, it will recognize that the test component doesn't exist in the cluster that it's trying to deploy to, and it'll actually go and try to deploy test component. But because test component is basically there's no data to it, the deployment will fail for it. But that's the concept of, now if you look at the online store company on the component selector, so go ahead and expand that one out on the right there. You'll see where the domain-driven design comes into place, like at purchase processing, store services. If you click on those, you'll see subcategories, like the payment processing. So this is how the domain-driven design allows us to organize services that are functionally together. So if you like,
each of these, I presume, is a microservice, right?
It's a collection of microservices.
Oh, okay.
So if you click one more time, you'll see this one we have. This one just has one microservice in it, but it's actually 3 versions of the same service.
Okay.
I can't remember if any of them have multiple.
Checkout service.
Yeah. We're only playing with 12 microservices, so I don't know if we'll have, multiple different microservices in the same category for this demo.
Okay.
The demo data, but basically that's giving you the different versions, and that's kind of how the domain hierarchy is utilized. For what you're doing, you can start out with just everything at the test drive level, and then when you need some organization, you can go ahead and add in additional domains and move things around.
Okay. Cool.
So let's go ahead and highlight your test.
So what's the significance of, I see this diagram here. So what's the significance of that diagram? I see that one.
It technically is the deployment order.
Oh, okay. I see.
But
so ad service is deployed first, followed by email service, front end.
Yeah.
Doc catalog. Okay.
We're actually in the process of changing this diagram because it doesn't support like 5,000 microservices. It'll get a little busy when you get into a large number of microservices. So this page is actually going to be reworked down the road here shortly.
So can one refer to this as just the deployment pipeline? Is that just to just use that term, coin that term?
It is more the deployment order than the pipeline.
All right. Okay.
But one thing, let's go ahead and highlight your test component there on the palette, and right click and say remove, delete this component. It's not going to make it gone forever. We're just going to remove the association.
All right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's a neat interface. It's definitely visual. It makes things much easier to see.
And then, are you familiar with any of the CI tools like Jenkins or Circle CI?
Yeah, Jenkins I've used extensively.
Okay.
So I'm quite familiar with Jenkins.
Okay. Because there's another part that we should probably look at maybe next time. I know you said you scheduled 2 of them.
Yeah.
That we'll look at how Jenkins is connected into this. Because there's a lot of information we can gather from the CI process.
Right.
So we don't have to type it in.
Okay. So is it able to make API calls to Jenkins, I presume then?
Yes, it'll work both ways. We'll actually we've actually set it up so you can trigger a Jenkins job as one of those custom actions or post action. So we can actually interface with Jenkins at that level, or Jenkins can call Deploy Hub to go ahead and do things as record the component that was just built, or like the Docker image. So if we just built the Docker image and pushed it, we want to, on the Deploy Hub or Ortilia side, we want to record that as a new component version. So there's a Python library that we use to go ahead and hook into the Jenkins pipeline.
Okay. All right.
And then from there, there's things like we'll also build up the application version, and we'll get into it next time on how it all that the CI/CD pipeline kind of hooks together.
Wonderful. Great.
So play with this.
Okay.
Kind of get the feel for it, poke around, and I will look at that license thing that popped up, and I'm just wondering if when we bootstrap the sample project that something didn't get set correctly for the license count.
Okay. So are you? So presumably you're recording this session. Do you have a YouTube channel where that can be posted?
Yes, we will post it over to the Ortelius YouTube site.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
And I will post that probably tomorrow. I'll get it posted up.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
So, and I will. Are you on our Discord channel?
No, what's the link for that? Is it?
Let me get it real quick for you.
Right. Okay.
That's the best place if you have any questions at all. You can get somebody on the Discord channel,
right.
or we have folks that are in India, Pakistan, South Africa, UK, the States, Australia. So there's usually somebody available.
Right.
Chile. Let me put into the chat if I can find chat. It'll be. So give that link a go.
Thank you. I'm going to do it right now.
Now let's make sure it works.
Accept invite.
Yep, I saw you just come in. Yeah, that's just an update from Discord. So on the welcome message there, just hit got it right now. Go to the code of conduct.
Oh, code of conduct channel.
Yep, and see that little check mark at the bottom? It just says you're going to play nice.
Of course.
Yeah, so click on, I don't think it got you. Should go to 45. There it is.
Right.
So now it authorized you for the other channels. So the general channel is basically for just things that are happening overall, whether we're doing like marketing. This is where the YouTube, so the ping cord is an automatic bot that we have. So when we post something to YouTube, it'll show up. So when I post this session tomorrow, you'll get a message saying that it was uploaded.
Oh, all right.
And then the dev channel is for the Ortelius development channel. So this is more technical stuff. We'll get into longer running tips and tricks, or if we have to figure something out, we'll chat on this channel here. And then those are the main two channels that we utilize.
All right.
Oh, and then there's the bot build results. So we actually use, yeah, if you keep going down, that one there. So this is when we check in something, whether it's the website or update to Ortelius itself, we have Google Cloud Build triggers in place and deploy up SaaS to actually go ahead and build things and deploy them automatically through our CI/CD process.
So this is just a notification channel.
Yep, this is the notification channel.
All right, cool.
So go ahead and take a play around with the UI.
Right.
If you have any questions, just reach out. And I believe Thursday is the next one.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Thursday we'll take a look at. We'll answer any questions that you have about the UI, any of the concepts. I think you had the documentation up earlier. The documentation is pretty good.
Right.
And from there, we will answer any questions you have on Thursday, and then we'll dive into the Jenkins side.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for your interest, and hopefully this gets you going.
All right, cool. Thank you, Steve.
All right. Where are you located?
I'm in California.
Okay.
Bay Area, Redwood City.
Got it. Okay.
And you're coming from where?
I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh, wow. Okay. How's the weather there?
We got a lot of rain today, which is great because we're in an extreme drought.
Okay. We needed it too. Yeah.
Yeah, we needed the rain. So it's still cloudy and rainy, which is great.
Okay, cool. So looking forward to seeing you on Thursday then.
Perfect.
All right. Okay.
All right. Yeah, have a good night.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.